Welcome to this series of readings of the Mechanization concept, a manifesto by the Great Divine Director. There are 22 parts to these releases by the Great Divine Director. He has asked that they be read in the order of their release. I am Caroline Hansky, the reader. The teachings were given by the Great Divine Director through the messenger Mark L. Prophet in 1965. Permission was granted for reading them and making them available to the general public in audio form. These readings are from Mark and Elizabeth Prophet, The Mechanization Concept, The Mysteries of God on the Creation of Mechanized Man, Pearls of Wisdom, Volume 8, Teachings of the Ascended Masters, Summit University Press, copyright Church Universal and Triumphant, 1965. They are also published as Mark L. Prophet, the Soulless One, Cloning a Counterfeit Creation, copyright 1965, 1980, 1981, Summit University Press. Why would you want to listen to and or read these releases? Because the message in them is as important now, or even more so, as when it was originally delivered. The message is serious and ought to be taken seriously. The mechanical, non-human creation, not created by God ones, are among us and have been for thousands of years. We have taken on their consciousness to some degree and must free ourselves from it. Prayer and working on our psychology are two ways of doing this. But first, we must be aware of what the mechanical consciousness is. These releases by the Great Divine Director are for this purpose. What makes this so relevant at this time? If you are following the news of the development of robots for every conceivable purpose, then is it not curious that this is made to seem a new development? As these current robots are portrayed, they are obviously mechanical. Yet, just as obvious from the Great Divine Director teachings is the fact that the robots that have been on the earth for thousands of years appear like humans. We don't know the difference. Then why is it important to make us think this is a new advanced development? Something to ponder. The Great Divine Director is a cosmic being with many offices in the spiritual hierarchy. For example, he is a member of the karmic board in which he represents the first ray of God power. He is known as the Great Divine Director because he has merged his consciousness with the cosmic cycles of God's divine plan for untold universes of light. Great Divine Director is a title of an office in the cosmic hierarchy, given to the one who, by virtue of diligent application over the eons, focuses within his causal body the formula of the ascension for the children of God and the sons and daughters of the Most High evolving in this cosmos. The causal body is the spiritual part of us in which is stored our attainment, all merit we have ever accrued, our treasures stored in heaven. The Great Divine Director's causal body is a giant blue sphere that surrounds the entire planet. Thus, his attainment of cosmic consciousness qualifies him to ensoul the flame of divine direction on behalf of Earth's evolutions and untold lifeways beyond. The Great Divine Director long ago passed those initiations that placed him at cosmic levels of service and qualified him to become the Manu of the seventh root race. A Manu embodies the archetype for an entire life wave of souls who will incarnate on Earth at a certain period, including the divine image and likeness out of which they are made and the pattern of their destiny. The seventh root race is destined to embody first in South America under the Great Divine Director, and so he presides spiritually over the continent of South America. He is then the lawgiver and sponsor of the seventh root race, the one who holds the blueprint for the entire race of the souls who begin their embodiment in the age of Aquarius that is now dawning. Godfrey Ray King, author of the book, The Magic Presence, describes the Great Divine Director in it. This majestic being stood fully 6 feet 4 inches in height, with wavy hair that fell to his shoulders and looked like sunshine on gold. His robes glittered with points of light like jewels that flashed continually with the tremendous radiance of the power held under his control and obedient to his conscious direction. The girdle encircling his waist was a mass of sapphires and diamonds. From it hung a panel to a few inches below the knees. This also was a mass of jewels. End of quote. The great divine director has said, I pray that you will call to me, for I have within my consciousness the scroll of the divine plan for every living soul on Terra and in the vast beyond. The Mechanization Concept, a manifesto by the great divine director, Part T, Thee. To America and to thee, O shining world, why will ye tarry? Accept thy mantle of leadership and of challenge to deliver to the people of God freedom and the message of the true man-child, the Christ image of every man, by which all things were and are made. Rise then to the grandeur of your noble birthright and throw off the mechanical yoke. Of thee I sing. As we survey at inner levels the magnificent concept held by your beloved Saint Germain for America, we are reminded of the great vision of the Ascended Master's counsels for the earth and her evolutions. Of thee I sing. O shining world, how great is God's concept for thee! With what hope wert thou bestowed forth from the great dayspring to be, as a natural planetary home, part of a vast galaxy system, part of cosmos. To thy halls, to thy rocks, to thy plains were destined to be brought the wondrous powers of celestial beauty and harmony. Thy civilizations, stretching from pole to pole, were intended to manifest the harmony of universal love. The high road of adventure and comradeship was imparted to thee by the sons of God who came to thee. The messages that were uttered by the many avatars of God who have visited and carried out their missions to the earth have been varied in expression. Some uttered the law in thundering tones. Others spake gently or taught by the silent power of example. No sure mold, no single way, has expressed all of the attributes of God, save the swaddling garment of the Christ, which revealed for all time to come that the Christ image of every man is the universal Christ image of God, the Son of God. The words uttered by John, all things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made, referred to the solar Logos, the Son of God, the Christ image that, before Abraham was, I am. Why then will ye tarry? This question brings to mind the tarrying of man upon the cross of matter and form. So frequently have men asked, How long, O Lord? The sands of time flow gently downward at times of softly falling snow, and then again harshly as though driven by a stinging wind. They seem to maintain no evenness in their flow. A consciousness that beholds life is the interpreter of the relative descent of time. In the eternal, all-loving mind of God, the wondrous parade of the stars dances forth from his bosom of infinite fire, carrying a message of universal love that inspires men concerning the unfettered vastness of eternity as it manifests in moments of consciousness. Men are inspired by the sun as they gaze upon the explosion of an atom of substance, as they look within the cup of a tiny violet, or a billowing violet cloud at sunset. In all the moving forces of universal love beheld by man, there is a spirit, a master presence, that colors all life with grandeur, with beauty, with logic, at once in time and infinity. We know and we have become one with that spirit which is God. Your presence conveys to you the answer to the unknown. It is mirrored in the very heart of being. The echoes of eternity, the resounding of the voice of God, is heard within the mind and heart of man. Out of the silence is heard the voice of God. Why will ye tarry? There are many reasons for the seeming delays toward mankind's perfection. Some of these may be remedied by mankind, and some are dependent upon the great eternal fullness of time. A cosmic event waiting to happen is born because it is ripe or overripe. But the mechanical patterns of mankind have but sustained the recalcitrance of the race, the cold denial of the power of invisible love. As I speak the words invisible love, I know full well that whereas the wind may not be outwardly perceived, the effect of its blowing upon the trees can be. Therefore, the power of God's love upon the spirit of man is evidenced in countless faces and eyes, mirrored there for all to behold who can rightly read, and thus the glow of infinity, builded upon mineral, rock, dust, and star, flowing in fire and water and thought, surging in feeling and fountain from the depths of being, wells up in Saint Germain's vision of freedom for America as the land of the free and the home of the brave. What tarnish the centuries have brought to this noble vision, so lately externalized in this great land, America. With a swirl of mechanical progress, the soul of man has been dashed downward into a maelstrom of destructivity, and the whole world has jealously sought to keep pace with America's rate of progress. Now then, let us affirm, the dream need not be broken, for out of the crucible of the past few decades, the hopes of contemporary men for peace, for victory, for freedom can still be realized. Your Constitution and your history, O America, are replete with examples of sacrifice and unselfish struggle. As I conspire with the hosts of light as to how to deliver this great land from its bondage into the fullness of its dream, born in the mind of God, fortified by Saint Germain, and loved by many of his students throughout the world, I recall that with God all things are possible. Let us by truth counteract the mimicry of the mechanical hordes. Percentage-wise, the creations that we have termed mechanical man are few in proportion to the number of individuals in the world who are the true creation of God and a part of this planetary evolution. They who have a threefold flame burning within their hearts are the many, and the misguided and misguiding miscreations are the relative few. Unfortunately, however, by reason of their mechanical brilliance and their knowledge of the manipulation of matter and men, many of them are in positions of power. Yet I would never do despite to the many in such positions who are honorable and just and true. I would point out to the world and to America to awake and to realize that the purity of El Morya's program, as propounded in his encyclical on world goodwill, is very great. Yet all that we release to mankind in worded expression can come alive only in the field of action through the response of divine grace in the hearts of our hearers. Therefore, pause to consider the vision of Ezekiel in the valley of the dry bones. Recognize that vitality must be poured into the heart of America and the world, and that vitality must be God's life, God's grace, and God's purity. The essence of true being must sweep the world. Now even right action, when wrought by men whose hands are sullied with the vestiges of human filth, cannot create a perfect work. In the field of art there are many who produce from a sullied spirit a work of intricate and relatively beautiful symmetry. Yet there is a wretched etching behind the canvas scene, behind the screen of appearance, which transmits itself to the sensitive and reveals such art, although acclaimed by the world as lacking in true spiritual grace. By a like token, that which is imperfectly executed may be but the manifest effort of some who have not yet attained the fullness of the technique, but because the spirit is pure, noble, and grand, there is a touch of heaven in all that they handle. Let me reference the story of Midas, who turned to gold all that he touched. Would it not be well to cultivate the Spirit of God and His grace within mind and heart, within thought and feeling, so that the Lord might work his works of spiritual grace within you, that his hands through you might touch all life, changing all to the golden age love, law, and liberty? If mankind would only realize that the great I Am is the only doer, as well as the open door, they too would know the depth of understanding which was imparted to the king Nebuchadnezzar, which caused him to exclaim, "And he doeth according to his will in the army of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth, and none can stay his hand or say unto him, What doest thou?" This is the answer for the freedom of man from mechanical stagnation. Thus as thy day is, so shall thy strength be. Thus shalt thou mount up with wings as eagles, to attain some portion of thy eternal victory. For unto thee have I given my promise of old. Thou shalt run and not be weary, and thou shalt walk and not faint. To America is given leadership. To the world is given challenge. The people of every land must rise to the grandeur of their noble birthright and throw off the mechanical yoke. For progress I am the great divine director.